The truth unveiled. The desert keeps its secrets well, but time has a way of forcing them to the surface. Decades passed, yet whispers of Roswell never faded. What crashed that night? What did the military take away under the cover of darkness? And why did those who knew the truth stay silent until they couldn't? Major Jesse Marcel had long since left the service when he finally spoke. Wrinkled with age but sharp in memory, he sat before a camera, his voice steady but weighted. "They told me to say it was a balloon," he admitted. "But I handled that wreckage with my own hands. That was no balloon." The revelation sent shockwaves through the UFO research community. Marcel wasn't a conspiracy theorist or a man seeking attention. He was a decorated military officer. His account reignited the world's fascination, and soon others began to talk. Witnesses, long bound by fear, started coming forward. A former mortician from the Roswell area claimed he had been asked to prepare child-sized coffins the night of the crash. A retired officer spoke of bodies, humanoid but wrong, fragile limbs, oversized heads, eyes too large for their faces. The military had taken them away, along with the wreckage, and issued a chilling warning: forget what you saw. Officially, the government maintained its stance. In 1994, a report attempted to put the matter to rest once and for all, declaring Roswell had been nothing more than Project Mogul, a classified Cold War program using high-altitude balloons to detect Soviet nuclear tests. The debris. Advanced balloon materials. The bodies. Test dummies. For some, that explanation was enough. For others, it raised more questions than it answered. If Roswell had been nothing but a Cold War experiment, why the secrecy? Why the threats? Why had key evidence vanished? The deeper researchers dug, the stranger the story became. Some argued that the weather balloon narrative was planted to cover up not one, but two crashes, the real wreckage hidden elsewhere, far from prying eyes. Others believed Roswell was the first undeniable proof that we were not alone, and that knowledge had been buried under layers of deception ever since. Perhaps the most haunting revelations came from deathbed confessions. Former military personnel, with nothing left to lose, spoke of a recovered craft, of beings unlike anything on Earth. Some even suggested the Roswell wreckage wasn't just hidden, it was studied. If that was true, then the implications were staggering. Marcel's voice echoed in old interview footage, his gaze unwavering. "They can say what they want. But I know what I saw. The world had been given an answer. But was it the truth? Or just another layer of the cover-up? The lasting mystery." Roswell became more than a town, it became a legend. Decades after that fateful night, the story refused to fade, growing into something larger than the event itself. Books were written, documentaries aired, and investigators from around the world descended on New Mexico, searching for remnants of the past. For some, Roswell was the birthplace of modern UFO culture, a spark that ignited global fascination with extraterrestrials. For others, it was a cautionary tale, a reminder of how easily truth could be buried beneath bureaucracy and deception. And then, in the 21st century, something changed. The U.S. government, after years of denial, began to acknowledge something unusual. Reports on unidentified aerial phenomena, UAPs, surfaced. Declassified videos showed military encounters with craft moving in ways beyond known physics, and even high-ranking officials admitted they had no explanation for what they were seeing. Suddenly, the world was listening again. Investigators revisited Roswell with fresh eyes, scouring declassified files, searching for hidden truths. Some believed the wreckage had been taken to Area 51, where it was reverse-engineered. Others argued that the crash was just the beginning, that contact had been made and covered up ever since. But the answers remained elusive. In Roswell, the town embraced its place in history. The streets were lined with alien-themed murals, souvenir shops sold spacecraft figurines, and every July, crowds gathered for the Roswell UFO Festival, celebrating the mystery that refused to die. Yet, beneath the spectacle, serious questions remained. Mac Brazel had passed on long ago, taking his secrets with him. Major Jesse Marcel had tried to reveal the truth, but his words were met with skepticism and silence. And the military. Their story never wavered. Nothing happened in Roswell. But something did crash that night. Was it a classified military project, as the government claimed? Or was it something beyond human understanding, hidden away from a world not yet ready to know? The desert wind still whispered across the plains, rustling through the dry brush, shifting the sands over where the wreckage once lay. Somewhere out there, beyond the stars, the answer waited. And maybe, just maybe, it was watching the mysterious crash. The desert stretched endlessly under a sky bruised with the colors of an approaching storm. Mac Brazel, a rancher accustomed to the silence of the New Mexico plains, rode across his property, scanning the horizon. His horse snorted as the wind shifted, carrying with it a metallic tang, an oddity in the dry, familiar air. Then he saw it. Scattered across the rocky terrain was debris unlike anything he had ever encountered. The fragments gleamed under the fading sunlight, strangely smooth yet impossibly lightweight. Some pieces curled like burnt paper but remained cool to the touch. Others were rigid, laced with intricate patterns that seemed almost deliberate. One fragment, no larger than his forearm, flexed under pressure but refused to snap. Mac's pulse quickened. A storm was coming, but something far stranger had already arrived. By the time he reached Roswell, night had deepened the town's quiet. Sheriff George Wilcox sat at his desk, nursing a lukewarm cup of coffee, when Mac barged in, breathless and wide-eyed. "I found something out on my land," Mac said, laying a small piece of the wreckage on the desk. Wilcox frowned, running his fingers over the metallic surface. "What is this?" "Some kind of aircraft part." Mac shook his head. "It's not like any metal I've ever seen. It bends but doesn't break. Doesn't burn either." Wilcox's skepticism wavered as he examined the material, its surface oddly smooth, almost unnatural. A flicker of unease settled in his gut. This wasn't the kind of thing you dismissed outright. He reached for the phone and dialed the Roswell Army Airfield. Within the hour, 2 military vehicles rolled into town. The officers moved with quiet urgency, their uniforms crisp, their faces unreadable. At the forefront was Major Jesse Marcel, a man whose sharp gaze missed nothing. He examined the debris with an intensity that made Mac shift uncomfortably. "You're sure this is everything?" Marcel's tone was neutral, but something in his posture suggested the wreckage was more significant than he let on. "There's plenty more where that came from," Mac said. Marcel exchanged glances with his men before nodding. "Take us there." Under the cloak of darkness, they rode out to the crash site. The air felt heavier, charged with an unnatural stillness. When they arrived, Marcel dismounted and stepped onto the field of scattered wreckage. His men moved swiftly, collecting the strange material, sealing it in crates as if handling something radioactive. Mac watched, a gnawing sense of unease growing in his chest. The military's efficiency, their lack of hesitation, it was as if they had expected this. Then, one of the soldiers muttered something that made the others freeze. "There's more than just debris." Marcel followed his subordinate's gaze to a shallow trench near the wreckage. In the dim light, something unnatural lay half-buried in the earth. Mac took a step forward, but a soldier raised a hand, stopping him. "This never happened," Marcel said. The words were calm, but the warning was clear. And just like that, the night swallowed the truth. The government's cover-up. By sunrise, Roswell was buzzing. Rumors moved faster than the desert wind, talk of a downed craft, of soldiers working through the night, of something not quite human recovered from the wreckage. But when the Roswell Daily Record printed the words "RAAF captures flying disc," the town's murmurs turned into a roar. Mac Brazel hadn't meant to stir a frenzy. He had simply reported what he found. But now, the quiet rancher found himself at the center of something much larger. As he rode into town, eyes followed him, some filled with curiosity, others with fear. At the sheriff's office, 2 men in dark suits waited. Their presence was a quiet threat, their smiles too thin to be genuine. "You spoke out of turn," one of them said, voice smooth as polished steel. "It would be best if you corrected your statement." Mac frowned. "I told the truth." The second man leaned in, voice lower. "Then you'll tell a different one." Meanwhile, inside the Roswell Army Airfield, Major Jesse Marcel stood over a crate containing the wreckage. The morning's headlines sat beside it, bold and damning. His orders had been clear: transport the debris to Fort Worth, Texas. But as he ran his fingers over the strange material, doubt gnawed at him. This wasn't from a weather balloon. Yet that was exactly what his superiors had ordered him to say. Hours later, the official story shifted. The military held a press conference, retracting the earlier statement. A balloon. A simple misunderstanding. Nothing unusual. The press took the bait. The public, however, wasn't so easily convinced. Back in Roswell, Sheriff Wilcox received another visitor, one whose uniform carried more weight than any local authority. The officer's message was blunt. This didn't happen. There was no crash, no debris, no bodies. If anyone says otherwise, they're lying. Wilcox stiffened. And if they don't lie? The officer's eyes darkened. Then they'll regret it. That night, Max sat alone on his porch, staring out into the desert. He had done as they asked, told the new story. Yet the unease remained, like a splinter buried too deep to remove. The sky above stretched vast and endless, indifferent to human secrets. Somewhere out there, the truth hovered just beyond reach. At the same time, miles away, a convoy rolled through the darkness, carrying the remnants of something that wasn't supposed to exist. The wreckage would be hidden. The story would be rewritten. But some things refused to stay buried.